Pigweed here. Today we review a pale ale and ask, do you really need to pay income tax? Okay. All right. Well.
Hey, good evening. Good to see you.
How
about some beer and
Crowhill?
conversation?
That's a very good idea. What are we drinking?
Well, Chesterton gave us this Raised by Wolves. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be some sort of a comment or what, but
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
And from Old Right Proper.
Yeah. So I'll have to get in that.
It's in the Douglas Commonwealth. I see.
Okay, we'll have to explain that a little bit. So what's on your mind?
I work. We're not into tax season yet, but I work with a guy who just says he doesn't pay income tax, and you don't have to.
You don't have to. So are we suckers?
I guess.
Are we suckers for paying income tax?
Well, this guy's not in jail yet. He doesn't have his wages garnished. He just doesn't file.
Okay.
And he pays as little as he can and simply doesn't file. And I don't know. Well, yes. If he doesn't go to jail soon, we're suckers. But anyway.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about this beer. So, Right Proper Brewing is right down here in Washington, D.C., otherwise known as the Douglas Commonwealth, which is what they would call it, supposedly, if it became a state. Yeah, so it says right here, 51st state, Washington, D.C., made in the Douglas Commonwealth. Dry hopped pale ale, 5%.
Yes, I'm getting that. Try that.
Yeah, there's a lot of aroma there.
Yes, there's a dry finish, but some
that's pretty good.
Nice hoppiness, good nose, very good nose.
Yeah, that's very good.
And you can even by the color, you get a sense of a little bit of maltiness.
Yeah, and there's a touch of haze. Touch of haze, which I'm usually not a big fan of, but this is good. This is very tasty.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I don't know where in DC it is, or I've ever had one.
I'm pretty sure I had this on draft in DC one time. I'm not positive, but it's good. Very very pleasant hop flavor.
Any indication?
Good beer.
That's
all right.
Good.
So am I a sucker for paying my taxes?
Well, there are a lot of people out there who have a lot of different angles on this taxation is theft idea, and there's a libertarian angle that's just, this is being confiscated from you. I'm not willingly going into this arrangement.
Right.
And
which gets back to something we've talked about before, that they say that Western civilization is built on three pillars: Greco-Roman antiquity, the Bible, and what we inherited from the Germanic tribes. Which seems strange, but apparently this idea that people have a say in the laws that are over them comes from the Germanic tribes. It also apparently comes from the Indians, the Native Americans in the northern parts of the United States. But anyway, so that concept of...
And property rights, you are entitled to the fruit of your labor.
Yeah, so yes, and that concept that's right there in the Declaration of Independence, that governments get their authority by the consent of the governed.
Yes.
So you could imagine a person saying, well, I didn't consent to this.
Yes, well, that's a Lockean argument. The consent of the is when taxation is imposed without consent of the individuals, it can be seen as a form of theft. And so it's the taxation is theft is not a QAnon, know.
Yeah, John Locke said something like that. Right.
And it's a standard libertarian.
Sure. Well, if you think about taxation, like you're watching a Robin Hood movie or something, the sheriff of Nottingham comes riding by and takes some money from you. You can certainly understand people thinking this is theft.
But I mean, taxes are as old as anything. Our earliest writing. Yeah. Refers to taxation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the early, the cuneiform, the Sumerians. Yeah. Really, it's just like accounting.
Yes.
And,
you owed 5 fish and 2 loaves of bread and a jug of beer.
So, as far as we can tell, this is as old as we are. But still,
it's probably right there with prostitution.
Taxman is the second oldest profession.
Right. Yeah. So. What are some other reasons why somebody would believe that they don't have to pay tax? So,
right, so this is just in general principle. But now let's talk about the United States and how it's structured.
Yeah, yeah. So the income tax supposedly violates the Constitution's original intent.
Right.
Proponents of this view would argue that taxation would only apply to consumption, tariff, sales tax, but not directly to personal income. And there was actually a case, Pollock versus Farmers Loan and Trust, where the Supreme Court said that a tax on land, on property, or the revenue from property was unconstitutional. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of that. Because they said that was not, because all taxes had to be apportioned among the states based on population.
Right.
And taxing based on money directly from the land doesn't do that. Right. So it was unconstitutional.
This is a different tangent that I don't want to spend any time on, but property, to pay tax to continue to own a thing that you've already purchased.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
It's unpleasant. That's another topic.
Yeah, it is another topic. So then there's the voluntary compliance argument, which we've gone into, which is that people are saying, look, I didn't agree to this. Who signed me up for this? Then there's the question of federal tax laws that only apply to specific groups. Like that they don't. Some people would say that the federal tax laws don't actually apply to individuals. They only apply to like corporations and other kinds, but they don't apply to just your average Joe working at McDonald's or whatever. And then I don't know how this one's different from voluntary compliance, but the sovereignty and individual consent, right? But then I think the argument that's the most interesting out of all of these to me is that the 16th Amendment was not properly ratified. That's the one that's the one where people seem to spend a lot of time on.
I know, but are we getting into sovereign citizen territory here?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
So what they're going to say is there are rules for ratifying constitutional amendments.
Yeah.
That they have to be approved by 2/3 of the states or whatever the heck it is, and that several of the states didn't follow the proper procedures. That the 16th Amendment was never properly authorized.
All right, want to hear my version of that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, I've got that the 16th Amendment is invalid because A, the final ratifying state, the one that pushed the marker past 3/4 of the states, was Ohio. And Ohio was never validly admitted to the Union.
Oh my goodness.
B, William Taft was never a legal president in that he was a natural-born citizen because he was born in, see item A, Cincinnati.
Which wasn't a state.
However, get this though, so there's this irregularity in 1803 that allowed Ohio into so the 16th Amendment was what, like 1913?
1913.
Okay. Yeah. However, on the 150th anniversary, the Ohio legislature voted again to join the United States, retroactive to 1803. So, in fact, that's an acknowledgement that perhaps
there was a problem.
Perhaps there was a problem.
Yeah.
So we're going to clear that up.
Yeah.
Which, in case, makes this argument of the invalid.
This reminds me of two things related to Virginia. One is the existence of West Virginia. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's this really difficult argument about whether West Virginia legitimately became a state, because there are rules about the way the way things become states, and the question hinges on whether
the Southern states didn't agree to that, right?
Yeah. So the question hinges on whether Virginia was a state at the time of the siphoning off of West Virginia, because the North took West Virginia away from Virginia,
yes.
Right? So if Virginia had actually succeeded, then what the North did was lawful, taking this territory and making it another state. But if Virginia had not actually seceded, then the North did not have the constitutional authority to make West Virginia a state. So it becomes this whole big, complicated legal mess. And the other thing it reminds me of is the border between Maryland and Virginia is defined as where the headwaters of the Potomac are. Okay?
Yeah.
So this big case went into court that some more recent surveys found that the headwaters of the Potomac were not where they thought they were. And if they accepted this new cartographic, this new interpretation of where the headwaters of the Potomac were, they'd have to move the line for between Virginia and Maryland. And the Supreme Court said, "You're right, okay, that's but sorry, this is water over the bridge. You can't unscramble the egg. You know, the line's been here." So there are a lot of things that you can go back with this nitpicky stuff.
But the devil is in the details.
Yes,
I mean, you have rules for this is how this thing is established, and if you violate those, then somebody goes, "Well, I can just violate a different rule in a different way." It's
that's
like
right. That's a problem.
It is nitpicky, but it's legit.
That's what the law does.
That's
law
what
is supposed to pick at this. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so Maryland has jurisdiction over the Potomac all the way up to the Virginia border, right?
Yeah.
Bank.
Yes.
Which is interesting, but how else would you do it? Like how would you do a whole line in the
middle of the river?
And then you have your fishing laws or whatever on your side, it wouldn't make any sense. Right. So I guess I don't know. Does Mississippi work that way? Does one state?
I don't know. I don't know.
Another topic.
So you'd have to, if you fish, you need to make sure you're fishing right in the middle of the stream, so that neither side is really sure whether they have jurisdiction over you or not. Yeah, you can't do that. So there are a bunch of interesting arguments, and I listened to this YouTube video where people were saying they issued a challenge on like July 7th, the year 2000. They said, "We will pay $50,000 to anybody who can show us which law requires citizens to pay an income tax." And all these people, went out and tried to find the law. And according to the YouTube video, of course, everything on YouTube is true.
Yes.
They said, well, we looked and we looked and we wanted to get that $50,000 and we couldn't find it. There is no such law that requires people to pay an income tax.
But they deny if you say in the original Constitution, yeah, of course, but that's why we have amendments.
Yes,
because we amend the Constitution, and that works that way. And so, yes, the 16th Amendment.
Yes.
Now there wasn't a temporary income tax during the Civil War to finance the Civil War, and then it was rescinded.
Okay.
And I thought that this was to finance World War I, and they were just like, how about we just keep this? Remember last time when we
did it temporarily? Let's just do it forever.
Let's just do it forever. I think something like that went on.
It's hard. It's actually amazing that during the Civil War time that they actually ended the tax, because that's rare. Once the government starts to take a power, would they ever get it back again?
Or an agency. I heard, so we've got the new DOGE, Department of
Government
Efficiency, saying that there are like 450 government agencies.
There are more agencies than we've been.
That's almost 2 for every year
that we've been a country.
We create. Come on, do we really need all these anyway? Yeah. Do we? The IRS. That's one of the ones we might need to look at, and that's what we're looking at right now. So yes, so it was signed. It was ratified. It is in the law. It's not going to go well. It's just like the sovereign citizen guy who says, "I'm not driving. I'm traveling, and I don't need to have a license because I'm not a citizen of Arizona. I'm a
sovereign citizen.
I'm an international citizen."
So we were trying to kind of steelman the arguments for why you don't have to pay an income tax. So you want to like say why we think these are not true?
Well, so there was So I brought up the John Locke argument. Let's go to the Rousseauian argument, which is the social contract.
Yeah.
So, we all don't get to just do what we want to do.
Yes.
And just our daily behavior is within a social context, which means I'm going to do things that maybe is not the first thing I want to do, but I'm a part of a society and that taxation falls in that. You are contributing to some greater. You are giving up some of your money in the same way that you're giving up some of your personal freedoms to just not act willy-nilly however you want. Yeah. So that's kind of the other half.
And you can't possibly have a society where every individual decides, okay, yes, I'm going to go along with all the laws that have been passed up to this point. I mean, how could you do that?
Yeah. Like or everybody, I'm going to pay taxes, but I only want my taxes. I want my taxes to go towards that or that or that.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Like everybody, when they turn 18, they have to decide, okay, yes, I'm going to stay in the country and follow the rules, or I'm going to leave. Is that what you're going to do? Yeah. I mean, so there is this idea of, I think, part of the stupidity of the sovereign citizen thing is reducing everything down to the individual, where the individual is in some respect not the primary division or entity that what you have a culture, you have a group of people. So even in that quote by Locke, where he's saying that the people agree to these things, it's not every individual person, it's the people collectively.
Yes. Yeah. And the people collectively have decided that you know, in order to have to have clean water brought into the house, we all have to chip in here, and we would all, and a lot of us would like to go to the zoo and have and parks. Right.
So all these things are done. It's not that every single individual person gets to make these decisions. It's things happen collectively, and you have to go along with it. And if you can't live with that, then go find some other place. I mean, everywhere as a matter of fact, there is no place.
Finding that other place.
There is no place on the planet where every single individual gets to decide, oh, I'll follow these laws.
You go to the Amazon to a tribe. You don't think the tribal leader's going to have something to say about how you behave?
Sorry, you're not allowed to use the blowgun that way.
We have rules. I was trying to get away from rules, where I'm just an individual floating freely through space.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe if you were floating freely through space, then maybe then you could decide what laws would govern you. So we've got this idea: do we have to pay an income tax? There's the other practical side of this. Let's say that these arguments are right. The 16th Amendment was not properly decided, and there is no law saying you have to pay income tax.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, you don't pay your income tax, you're going to jail, except for your friend, apparently.
Yeah, well, apparently, you're going to find out how that works out. But
So, like it or not, this is the way things are.
This is just the way things are. Yeah. But let's speculate. But you said 1913, correct? Mm-hmm. And we also said there was a temporary one, but the government has always been financed.
Yeah, exactly. Where did they get their money? If
there
wasn't an income tax until 1913, how did the government run?
Well, it was strictly on tariffs.
Okay.
So that's another area to talk about, and another area is in the news.
In the news right now,
as income tax is. And the idea that, Trump is to be taken seriously, but not literally. I think he's floated the idea, but he would just. That's just something that's just like you and I would say something like that. Why do we even have to have a careful politician doesn't say things like that, but there's Trump.
There's Trump. Yeah. So let's explain tariffs first. Yeah. So a tariff is basically a tax on imported goods.
Yeah.
So if you're buying something from England, then it comes over here, the manufacturer in England is selling it for $1, but then the government imposes a 50-cent tax on it. So once it comes over here, it's $1.50.
Yes, and if it's tea, it might get dumped to the Boston Harbor.
Well, that's right. Yeah. So the tariffs are a way to say if you want to sell stuff into our country,
we have a market for your good. It's going to cost you something to bring that thing to market.
And tariffs are usually considered to be protectionist because basically what's going on is if, let's say you have a domestic cheese industry and people are making cheese in America, and then the French come along and try to sell French cheese into America at a lower price, then if we put a tariff on that French cheese, that supports the domestic cheese industry. So that.
But in the original, but we didn't have tea, so that's just a money making proposition there. Right. Yeah. But there are two things. It's right. It's a money making deal, finance your government, and it's a protectionist strategy.
Yes, that's right. So up until 1913, the country was run on tariffs, and there was no income tax. Yeah. Now there were probably other sorts of taxes,
and there was. Well, the other reason there was a revolution was the stamp tax.
Yes,
there are other taxes on exchanging of goods, but these are, to turn back to Locke, these are voluntary exchanges.
Yeah.
So you're paying a tax, but you're involved in a voluntary thing. The government isn't just confiscating your money just because you made it. So
let's say you're those cheesemakers in France, and you say, look, if I'm going to sell into the United States market, I know I'm going to pay this tariff in order to get into the United States market. So
and then you say to yourself, well,
is it worth it?
Is it worth it? Is it not? And then as the United States, you go, well, we don't want to drive the tariff up so high. They go, forget it. I'll just sell somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you find that.
Yeah. Now this gets into the whole question of who is actually paying the tariff.
Yeah.
Which is a big point of debate when people, because Trump will say something like, I'll put a tariff on this Chinese stuff and China will have to pay for it. And people will say, wait a minute, it's not the Chinese paying for it, it's Americans paying for it. Because if the Chinese make a car that they could have sold in the United States for $10,000,
right,
and then Trump puts a 100% tariff on it, and now we've got to pay $20,000 for it, who's paying that $20,000? Right. It's the American citizen who's paying that $20,000. Right. So from that perspective...
Right. I mean, that's true, but then because of that, they go, I'll go ahead and buy a Ford.
Yeah, that's right. So there's two other things to look at.
But there's the third. The third is what happens with the Japanese. The Japanese go, how about if we build all our Toyota Tacomas in Alabama?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And they say there will be zero. There are no tariffs on that.
That's right.
And so when I think about buying, I as a patriot, I want to buy American. Mm-hmm. Yes. A Toyota built in Alabama, that is buying American, because I don't care if the profits go to the Ford Corporation or the Toyota Corporation, but I do like the idea that Alabamans have jobs.
That's right, yeah. So this idea that it's the Americans paying for that $10,000 tariff, that's partially true, but it's also partially not true. And the reason it's partially not true is that the Chinese government is subsidizing the auto industry in China.
Right.
So, let's say, if China had a regular market-based economy, it would cost them $15,000 to make that car. Mm. But the Chinese government is subsidizing it so that they can make it for $10,000. Okay?
Right.
So then, if we impose a tariff on it, and then in order for them to be marketable in the United States, in order for them to be competitive, they need to go even lower on their price. Once again, that would be the Chinese government, because they are subsidizing production of that car. Right. So there's part of that. So, however, it is true that when you put a tariff on an imported good, if you want to buy champagne, for example, it's coming over from France, it's the consumer who's paying the extra money on that thing. Right. However, the other side of it, as you said, was, let's say, okay, now instead of some Chinese company making the car for $10,000, an American company is making the car for $10,000. So that it promotes American industry, and it promotes American jobs. So it's not as simple a thing as people like to make it out to be.
Or to demonize the tariff.
Yeah.
And say all you're doing is transferring that to the consumer.
Yeah.
And tariffs are dumb and tariffs are bad.
Right.
No, and there are other aspects to tariffs. But at this point, a combination of, I assume, much lower tariffs than they had back in the day, and this gigantic bloated government. Mm-hmm. Right. So so in the 19th century, you didn't need that much money.
Yeah. Well, because the government wasn't that big.
Well,
it didn't do that much.
No, until you got to the Wilsonian welfare state.
Right, yeah. Then when the government just dramatically increased in size and how much money
I saw an article that said, the idea of replacing that would mean an 85% tariff on everything.
On everything coming into the country.
Yeah.
And, of course, the other thing about that is nothing is ever a straight line. Like, let's say...
But it wouldn't be that thing.
Well, let's say there's a million goods coming into the United States every day, just to pick a number. And then you were to say, in order to raise the amount of money, we need to impose an 85% tariff on these million goods. Well, the reality is that then there wouldn't be a million goods coming in anymore.
Right. So, right. And there would also be, well, not on these 18,000 goods.
Yes, because they would always, we have friends over there. Yeah, yes, there's always the Congress always wants to meddle. That's how they have power, is by giving things to their friends. And
yes, that's right. That's how somebody who makes $175,000 a year becomes a multimillionaire.
That's right.
Which I don't even understand. Like
because they get their son to get a job with Burisma and make $1 million a year. Oh, wait a minute.
Hypothetically.
Hypothetically, yes. So, this whole tariff thing is interesting. I like the idea of being somewhat protectionist for the simple reason that I want Americans to have jobs. And I don't like this idea of American jobs being shipped overseas. And, here's another thing. People who claim to be environmentalists should be protectionists.
Yeah.
Because we have stricter environmental rules than anybody else. So if you want it done right, if you want it done in an environmentally friendly way, it's better to have it done here than have it done in China.
Exactly. If you want to dig
cobalt or something.
Lithium for your coveted EV cars.
That's right.
Yeah, go to the Congo and see how it's being done and how
that's not environmentally
or human.
You have children doing this. Yeah, so there is an ethical component to this, which is, look, we have a way of doing things that's better. We don't have child labor. We don't pollute the water and the air as much as people do elsewhere. So if you want, it seems to me that environmentalists should be really in favor of high tariffs.
Yeah, so if the cost of products goes up, are you okay with that if your income tax goes down? So this is kind of a value-added tax approach where you're going, all right, so let's do a 5% flat tax, and then a VAT tax, which is basically a national sales tax, right? So then you get all your money tax-free. Gosh, that number on my check
would just go way up.
It looks. In the original number, it looks so great compared to the one that I actually
get. That's right. Yeah.
So you get that money, and that allows people to put a roof over their head with no tax and buy food with no tax.
Well, see, that's the important thing, because generally speaking,
maybe even clothes you put in there, as long as they're not.
Because generally speaking, a value-added tax hurts the poor disproportionately. If you don't make those carve-outs for house and food and clothing,
right?
Because
so once you get those, now you are kind of you're choosing to buy, not necessarily luxury goods, but
but things you don't necessarily need. The extra whatever. So if you're spending a whole lot of money on beer or on some, although beer is liquid bread, so
and we're definitely going to cut the taxes on beer. That's for sure in our administration.
But if you're spending a lot of money on drones and television sets and other kinds of things, then okay, that's your choice, and then you pay the taxes on that. Now,
and that's what. But in that in itself, so even if you have the flat tax, the progressive tax part comes in when the greater the consumption, the greater the tax that you're paying, and so
So if you're Bill Gates and you want to buy some huge yacht,
go ahead.
Then go ahead. You're just going to pay a huge tax on that thing. So and it makes some sense. The difficult thing about all this is it's really hard to predict what the effect of these kind of changes will be, because just as I was saying before, if you were to calculate, we would need an 85% tariff to cover that assumes that things are going to stay the same, but nothing is going to stay the same.
No.
Everybody, if you swing,
you're going to create new motivations.
Yeah, if you swing at somebody, they duck, and when you change the rules, people adjust their behavior. So trying to make predictions based on the way things are now doesn't really work, because people will just
decide.
It's very
simplistic the way that sometimes that this cause will definitely and only create this effect.
Yes,
never works out.
Exactly. Think of okay, you have a bunch of single mothers And you obviously want to support single mothers. So you make a bunch of rules to support single mothers. And rather than helping single mothers, what it does is it creates a family crisis where you have more and more single mothers, you know?
Or I suppose in Hungary, after 4 children, you no longer pay any income tax.
Yeah, what are you going to get?
You get more kids.
You get more kids, yeah.
If that's what you want, that's what you incentivize.
Right, yeah.
So I'm not recommending not paying your taxes and claiming yourself to be a sovereign citizen and
the sovereign citizen stuff is just a little nutty.
Weird.
It completely
there's
misunderstands.
so many more people buying into that than seems to make any sense.
I know. It totally misunderstands the whole idea of, no, we are a people, a group of people. We are not individuals,
right.
You know? Yeah. All right. Anything else we got to talk about?
No, but I would like to see some changes that I expect in the future. I want to see. Yes, there will be higher tariffs. Mm-hmm. It will benefit American workers.
Yeah.
And hopefully with the reduction of the federal government, and we're not gonna get the budget under control because we just one time see them go, we're going to spend less money than last year. That's all. It could be $1.
Wouldn't that be nice?
$1 would be a huge start.
Even if they spent exactly what they spent last year, that would be a huge decrease because everything always keeps going up and up and up and up and
right.
up. What I want to see American men being able to work decent jobs and support a family. That's what I want to see.
Wow. Well, I'm all for that. All right.
Here we go.
Dirty jobs.
Cheers. Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.